Hey guys, good night, good day. Roger. Let's move this one away here. Okay, let me share my screen before you forget. Let's do this here. The renders I had today. So today we're going to be doing some XGen. So some of you guys are playing with it already. So and some of you actually have more experience than I am with XGen. So that's all good. Yeah, I think like to start with it, I'm gonna just like do an introduction of how it works and all that stuff, and then we're gonna be doing some of the simplest stuff to do with XGen, which is the peach fuzz and the eyelashes. Let me get a thumbs here because I have a little bit of a hard one. Old people, you know. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna be doing like the peach fuzz, the eyelashes, and then if we have time, like some of the, it's like the nose hair as well. And then starting next week, you're gonna do the most, the most complicated stuff, which is basically like the eyebrows, which is not like super complicated. It's just that it's better if we use guides to have a better result. And then obviously the hair itself, right? And in the case of his hair, because I want to do some braids, I think I'm gonna get into a little bit of a trouble here. So I'm still researching the best way to do it. I think I have an idea on how to approach the best, and we're gonna hope for the best. We're gonna be using interactive for everything, which is very cool because like the name says, I mean, like, everything is interactive, but at the same time, the core version had some very nifty stuff. It's like I know some people who use just the core, don't use the interactive at all, and they get very nice results. But it's all like based on maps and equations and little formulas here and there. So we are more like mostly artists here, so we're gonna try to avoid that and just use like interactive sculpting. Basically, we're gonna be sculpting the hair. So let's see how we start this whole thing. A little introduction to XGen here is that you're gonna notice like in your Maya interface, by default, you're probably gonna have like Maya Classic in here in the workspace, right? Which is basically like the four, if you press space, right, you get your four views in there. And but the best thing to do if you want to work with XGen Interactive is just switch to this tab here, this preset that says XGen Interactive Groom. And this one gives you that little tab on the side that I'm using for the most, I think for all those classes, right? I'm using this interface here. So the interactive groom is cool because you get like this interface in here for the groom itself. And then you get this one for the channels, and then the outliner, everything is in one place, right? And apparently mine already broke here because I'm not seeing the other menus in there. Let's see. If it's broken, I'm just gonna quickly reset this. Yeah, weird, look at that. Let's see if I can do this. My workspace, let's just try to reset the factory default. Yeah, for some reason, it totally fucked it up. I cannot access the menus I need in there. So let's hope it's gonna self-correct itself here. Let me just close very quickly. That's not an XGen problem, that's a Maya problem, right? So let's try that again. Start fresh. Meanwhile, let's do something here. So Maya is thinking about if it's gonna open or not. Let's switch here, 85. And one map that I want to paint in here, because in the past, if you watch the other videos, I was doing lots of cheats to actually get the density of the hair. It's like kind of like if you try to paint the density within Maya, more likely you're gonna get like lots of bugs and probably crashes and stuff. So my license is gonna expire 15 days apparently. So let's just do this. And okay, let's open that one. Let's hope that I get, yeah, now it's reset. You see, like before I wasn't seeing anything here. Now I have like the menu in there. So that's basically what I want you guys to switch to, XGen Interactive Groom. And if you have trouble seeing those things, those menus, then you're probably gonna have to do the same, maybe like reset your Maya. So the way that I'm gonna approach this is by creating the, I think I'm gonna start with eyelashes. So there are a few adjustments I'm gonna have to do before we can start it. And the first one is this. So check this out. Like I have my eyeball in there, and those edges in here, they're not running completely parallel to the eyeball. So it would be nice if they are very parallel to it, right? So kind of like they kind of like echo the shape, the curvature of the eyeball itself. So before I even start this, I'm gonna go back to ZBrush for a second, and I'm just gonna tweak a little bit those lines so they look a little bit more like a curved and following the structure in there. Let's see, the top ones apparently have a good flow in there already. Kind of puffy. I have to tweak, like make a little flatter down there, but so I'm gonna be doing two things to prepare this model first. I was mentioning, for example, like if we are painting the density interactively, that's basically what you do, like the density tool right here. This is probably the most buggy tool that Maya has to offer, like XGen. This one gives me all kinds of trouble. So instead of like using density, what I was doing to cheat it, I would basically like shrink them to, it's like to very little hairs. For example, if I wanted to remove hair, I would shrink them. So I would add the hair anyway, and then shrink them a lot, and then make them super thin. So they would basically blend with the rest of the peach fuzz, and I would consider like, okay, those hairs are gone, right? It's because like this is super buggy, and also there's one thing that's a limitation in Maya. It's not a limitation of XGen per se, but it's a Maya thing that you cannot paint in 3D view in Maya across UDIMs. Basically, like if you have just one single UDIM, you can paint totally fine, like the densities you want. But if you have multiple UDIMs like we do, like 5 of them, Maya doesn't paint across it. But that's not to say that XGen doesn't support it, because it does. The only thing we're gonna have to do is that instead of like painting things interactively in Maya, we're gonna have to paint in ZBrush and export those maps back here. And then XGen should recognize even with the UDIMs and everything. So before we even start, in the past, what I would do, I would select all the faces. For example, if I would add like a peach fuzz, select all the faces and then go and deselect the lips and deselect the inside, like the pocket inside of the mouth, the pocket inside of the eyes, right? And part of the eyelids, because we don't want a peach fuzz in those areas, right? Same for inside of the ear here. So, and then the bottom of this area here, don't need peach fuzz here either, right? So I would select kind of manually here using my UVs as a guide. But let's do differently. Let's start by painting a density mask in ZBrush and see if that works out for us. So the first thing you're gonna do, we are not gonna need like a super high res mesh and super high res maps, right, for the density. It can be something very broad. So I'm gonna start by duplicating this model here. Remember that my highest resolution is only 1.1 million. And if I duplicate the HD, is not gonna be duplicated, right? So I'm just gonna duplicate it like this, and I'm gonna rename it so I can remember. I'm gonna put like hair density here, right? And then the first thing you're gonna do, I'm gonna paint everything. I can paint like fairly white, the whole thing. So let's do that. And then make sure that not material, but RGB is on, and 100% here. Because remember, like if this is not 100%, ZBrush does incrementally. So that's another trick. For example, if you want to paint this this model is slightly red, more red, you can do this by switching to red, for example, and then you can use like a very low intensity. And when you do the coloring here in fill object, it's increasingly adding more and more red as you click on it, right? So it's cool that you can do like very like in tiny little steps. For example, like if I can add some blue in here by using just one intensity and just do like fill, just adds tiny little bit of blue in there. I'm clicking a lot now until there's a switch to purple here, right? So you can do like a little adjustments like that. But in our case, we're gonna just flush this completely white. That's just like out of curiosity. So color and then fill it. So this is all white now. I'm gonna switch to another material here so it's not saturated. So it's all white. So that means like I have hair everywhere here. But if you remember, I have like my polygroups, right? That can help me to select stuff more easily here. So let's do this. Let's select those guys like that. And I'm gonna keep the lips away from it. And I'm gonna need this one too. I'm gonna have to paint that. Actually, the bottom here I don't need. So let's see. Let's get this one and this one. So now all those objects here, those internal pockets for mouth and eyes and eardrums and the bottom here, I don't need hair in those, right? So I can just paint like straight away like black in here. So let's go to black, oops, like that, then color, and then fill object. And then let's see, now I have black around the lips or all the way to that area. So I know that the pockets are completely clean, right? And now I can paint like manually some more blacks inside. So let's do this. Let's switch, go back one subdivision level, and I'm gonna switch to my transform symmetry, use posable symmetry, so I can actually paint across it. And I'm gonna just add, I'm sorry, standard and RGB, no Z add, and then I can paint like full black inside. Let's turn off my lazy mouse. So let's paint that. So I don't need Peach Fuzz inside, right? For that, I'm gonna be using just, you know, it's like painting a mask within Maya just to create the nose hair. But this is like, this mask here is mostly for my Peach Fuzz and overall density of hair. So I'm just gonna do this, remove that stuff. And then if you have a little bit of white in this area, in this edge here, it's totally fine because the Peach Fuzz is gonna be covering all the way there. But the lips, you definitely don't want any Peach Fuzz or any type of hair in the lips. So you can actually just blend until here, but you definitely need some Peach Fuzz around this little edge here, right? So we're gonna keep that in mind. And I'm just gonna paint the lips area, but the edge I'm gonna keep it white so I can actually have some Peach Fuzz in there. So now I have this as an area for everything that's white here is gonna grow hair. Everything that's black is not gonna grow any hair. And then I can do the same for the inside of the ear here. Since it's a little bit more waxy and we don't need hair in there, but starting here, we're gonna have hair around it. But my ear is still kind of, you know, it's like rough. I still have to sculpt more decently. But I'm gonna do this even inside there. And then from this point on, everything here is game for some Peach Fuzz. Let's get some more of that. Even around here. This area is supposed to be pretty waxy. So, but the area around it, I'm gonna keep a little bit more white. Okay, so now I have this mask. Looks good in there. And then that should have it. Oh, actually, the last part, the eyelids. So I'm gonna paint this because we don't want any Peach Fuzz covering that area, right? We need to actually make sure that we have it, oh, sure, free of Peach Fuzz in the inner part. That's basically like the membrane. Imagine if you had Peach Fuzz in there, right? Like you would be scratching your eyes or irritating your eyes constantly, those little fuzzies. So we need to eliminate from that bottom part of the lid. And then let's go white in here. This little edge. Something like that. So that's basically like everything that's white, it's gonna grow Peach Fuzz in here. And I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, this area here, I don't care. It's gonna be under the clothes, but I definitely wanna grow some around the neck and stuff like that. So like for exporting this one, let's just do the regular stuff, right? We don't need to create anything too fancy. So let's just do like hair density and go to export the poly paint. Don't need to switch morph target. And I'm gonna use probably just like, let's say like 1K maps. I think should be enough. Like 1K maps, so it's fast. And that's about it. So let's try that under my source images. That should take just a little bit. Okay, 12 seconds, not bad. Okay, let's switch to this guy here now. So let's talk about, oh, actually, before I do this, let me just go back here and make sure that I have that edge of the eyes adjusted that I mentioned. So let's see if we have the eyeballs in there as a, just as a placeholder. Oh, what's going on? This one. So they're kind of deep in there. I think those are the old eyes. But let's try to replace them first. Let's delete this. And then let's get the new eyes, the newest ones, so I can have a better idea what I'm gonna do in there. Let's get this one. See, like the corner, you still have to adjust that. It looks funky in there. But at least we get like the latest eyes. Let's try export. And then my computer fell asleep for a second. All right, OBJ eyes, let's synchronize with number 13. And let's bring them back here. So let's create bring the star here. Import OBJ eyes. And then let's switch back to, oh, this is still the old Stan Winston. Yeah, I'm gonna just like delete this tool altogether because otherwise it's gonna be heavy every time I save it. So let's delete this. And yeah, that's it. So this guy, let's append the eyes 13, okay? So that's okay right there. So eyes, where is it? Oh, I got just one. Oh, the other one came flipped maybe. I think it's flipped. Let's see. Yeah, that's flipped. So to save, to solve that, you just like hide this one. And then you can just go to your display and properties and then flip. Done. Let's subdivide one time, Control D, 2 times, and then turn on this guy here. Okay, so those are the new eyes. At least like they're still a little deep, but not too bad. And then let's look at the UVs and the edges in here. They're still a little wonky in there. So I'm gonna just go to a lower res and play a little bit with that. Let's use that little trick of saving the morph target first. I'm gonna do like a morph target, delete, store, and then let's play with those edges with the move brush. You should be fairly symmetrical, at least the eyelids. So I'm gonna be basically doing both at the same time. I'm just gonna rotate them slightly towards the eyeball so it gets a little bit closer to that, that angle. Let's just smooth it out. So it runs a little bit more in parallel to it. So let's see, bring this one corner up. Even that corner in there is a little weird. We're gonna have to correct it eventually when I actually doing tweaks. I'm gonna have to tweak that, but I wanna pay attention just to the edges at this point. As long as you keep them pretty, you know, it's like running with the eye direction, you should be able to tweak and, you know, it's like add more stuff later and still have the eyelashes fairly in the same position. As long as you just move stuff sideways, you don't move up and down at this point. Once you have this area here locked, the eyelashes should be right in that little wave in there. So let's bring this one in as well. See, like when you look closely by models, it's still pretty messy, but this is all part of the cleaning up that should come later. Yesterday we did some cleanup, but still have to do plenty of it. Okay, so for the top one, seems like it's in a better shape. I'm just gonna bring this one closer. And I wanna make sure that the edge, yeah, I think it's gonna be good right there. If it's continuous, it's good, you know, because we're gonna have to select that in Maya. And then I'm gonna bring this corner down a little bit. I think that should do it. So I have like the edges now are a little bit more, have a better flow in relation to the eyeball. So I'm just gonna do this. And I'm not even gonna reproject that because I saved the morph target with the intention of doing that little trick with the slider for the morph target. But I think I'm gonna keep it this way because I still have to work in this area quite a bit. So I'm not gonna be too concerned about it for now. Just make sure that things are looking good. Back and down, yeah, I think it should be good. Let's export this guy here as my base mesh. And as usual, I'm exporting at the subdivision level 2, right? And then let's do this. That's gonna be my head mid-res 14. OBJ. Okay. And then let's see what we have here. So let's replace this head with the new one with the new edges. So file, import. And then OBJ 14. And then let's switch to outliner and then grab this latest one I just imported. That should be around here, the last one, this one. And then let's select the original one, this one. And let's go to deform, blend shape, option box, and then let's just, all right, that's the name of my blend shape. So we should be around here. Let's crank it down, okay. And then now we can just delete my history. Not delete all history for all objects, it's just for the current object, right? And then with that being said, then I can just delete this one I just brought in. So this one should have the edges like I just tweaked in Maya, in ZBrush. Okay, so let's start by doing some eyelashes now. The map's already saved. We're gonna use them when you have the peach fuzz. But for those areas here, I normally, my preference is to actually select just the edges I wanna work on, right? So the best way for you to do this quickly is to turn on the symmetry. For example, like the object is very asymmetrical right now, right? But the topology should be symmetrical. So in Maya, you have this option here. It says symmetry off. If you just click the drop-down menu and select topology, now we can find like an edge that's right in the middle. Easiest one is going to be like right here in the nose. So I'm going to click this one. And now everything else I tried to select, it should be symmetrical, as you can tell right there, right? So it's going to be easy for me to just like select an edge in here. So let's do like for the eyelid. I normally get like a couple of edges instead of like just one. And because I want to be able to play with, you know, it's like with the eyelashes in different places slightly. So I'm going to start with this line here. I'm going to click one time with the little edge. And then I'm going to make sure I follow the same one. I can double click around here. And then I follow the same one. I'm going to click around here. And then around, let's see, all the way. It doesn't need to go all the way down there. So maybe around here. And now I have that edge selected, right? Which is like matches that other side as well. And then I think what I can do, looks like it'll close. I'm gonna do another row in here. So I'm gonna click shift. So I'm gonna click this one. And then I'm gonna double click this one. And then double click this one. I can even go a little bit closer here and add some of the tiny ones around this area. So let's try that. And then now if I have my edges selected, two of them, I'm gonna just press Control F11, which is basically converting from edge to polygon, right? And actually, I think it would be better if I remove the top one in there. I'm gonna just do this manually. So I'm gonna click this this guy here, paint selection. With B, you can actually reduce, just drag and click and drag with the left mouse button. And then you can just like, with the control, shift, is it shift? Let's see. Oh, it's because I'm in edge selection mode. So I'm gonna just right click and then go to faces. And let's try again. What happened in there? Face. What? Oh, okay, there you go. So let's just click this one. Just make sure that the symmetry is still on if you need to do that, because I want to make sure that I'm painting both sides. Let's try that. So yeah, I think that's gonna be enough. I don't need like those, you know, to get too close to the eye in there. And then obviously I want the eyelashes to, instead of like being a perfect line, I like to have the eyelashes with some space in room to actually be placed. So that's why I keep like 2 edges like this. Sometimes you can even add like 3 edges. It all depends on how you're gonna do it. But I think with 2 edges, I'm gonna have enough variation, but it's almost like I'm tempted to add a 3rd one in here. But I'm not sure if I'm gonna do it. It should be fine. If I need to adjust, I might actually just spread out those edges a little bit, just like, you know, relax them, and then I get them more spread out. But I think like 2 should be enough. So now I have like the 2 for both sides, right? As you can tell here. So like the orange stuff in there. We have to think about like the number of eyelashes that you have to add. If you do like a Google search, the number of eyelashes in average, right? Like it's about like double the amount in the top than you have at the bottom. So for example, like at the top, it's probably anywhere between 150 and 200. So you're gonna have anywhere between 75 and 100 in the bottom part, right? So that means that combined, I'm gonna have like 200 in the bottom max, and then 400 at the top combined for both eyelashes, right? Or eyelids. So let's start with this one here. So we have the selection there. Let's create our very first XGen description here. So in this tab here, with your faces selected, you're just gonna click Create Interactive Groom Splines. And you can just name, for example, lower lashes or eyelashes, whatever you want to do. And then this slider here, density, it changes this number in here. So it shows you like an approximation of the number of hairs that are going to be created, right? So if you play with it, and let's say you're talking about like both together, because you have the selection of both, right? We should get around 200 in here. So let's try to find a number that gives us that. Oh, 4. So 4 gave me 201. So for the length, we're gonna have to think about it, because the length is not gonna be completely important right now, because we're gonna be using guides to help out a little bit. But I would say like a ballpark, maybe like 2.5 or something like that. And then for the CV count, I would actually keep a little high in here, because we want to make sure that the curvature is very nice. You can either use 32 or even 64, because you're using like just a few of them. It shouldn't be heavy at all, right? So I'm gonna apply this, and you're gonna see the lashes in there. And it's very hard to see because it's a little pixelated, right? If that happens, you can go to your render viewport too, and then click the option box. And if you scroll down, you can actually go to anti-alias and just turn on both like UVs and multi-sampling anti-alias. And now you should be able to see it's like much smoother, right? It's just very thin right now. So about how thin it is, remember when I created them, I have that option to, I have that option right here to put like the width, right? I could incorporate like already like a higher width there. I did not, but you can change at any time. So for example, I'm gonna close this one back. So every time you wanna change the properties of the hair itself, you can click in the top node, this one, right, that you just created. And then this is basically the width right here, right? That's where you're gonna change how thick it is. I don't know exactly what's the number you're gonna land in here, but they're gonna keep it at 0.5 for now. And then you have other controls, like for example, the tapering here, that you can actually taper the tips, right? Or do the opposite. And then if you don't wanna use this one, or you can use in combination, you can use with the ramp itself, which I normally like to use with spline as the interpolation, right? And the way it works is that if you bring this one down, that's gonna be basically the tips, and this one is gonna be the root, right? Normally what I do, I try to keep the root a little bit thinner in the base, that like, you know, a little bit, just because it kind of blends better with surface in there. But obviously, like the physical thing would be like kind of like the same thickness, right, coming out of the skin. I just think it blends nicer if it has a little bit of tapering close to the base. So that's basically what I'm doing there. At this point, there's no curvature, and even at 2.5 length, they're kind of short, right? So we're gonna be, we're not gonna be too concerned about that, because we're gonna be using guides to help us out. So introduce guides. So just to, you know, remember here, I should have roughly like 100 hairs in each one of the eyelids in here. And at the top, it's gonna be double that, so 200 in each one of them, right? So for now, let's just do this. Let's add some guides in here. Before you do this, so the structure of each one of those hair descriptions we are gonna create. So the first one we created by using this interactive grooming here with the faces selected, right? We pressed it, we created it, and then you just create this first one here. So if you expand it, the structure underneath here, you're gonna have like a default nodes in here. So this one is always gonna be there. It's gonna be the name you gave and then underscore base. This one, you can actually increase the density. For example, if I put 2 in here, so you got like twice as dense, right? If I put like 0.5, it's gonna be half of the density. So you can play with that. You can use masks for that. Basically, like you can plug a map in there if you want, right? I'm gonna keep at 1 because that's kind of like the number we want. Then you have the scale. The scale as well, you can use a mask. So basically, you can grow them. If you use, for example, a fractal in here, a noise, you can actually control like the variation of the length, right? So we can do that. And this is the overall scale here as well. Also, you can plug map in it, right? For now, we're gonna keep everything vanilla in default. And then this is the one that you're gonna have to pay attention every time you're sculpting something, because if you fail to do this, sometimes you can get some major bugs with XGen. So basically, like if you're gonna sculpt those curves in here manually, right? You're gonna use any of those tools in here to sculpt it manually. If you don't have this turned on, edit in here, sometimes you are, you know, have some other description clicked, and you think you're, you know, doing something with this guys, but you in fact like painting influence or whatever you're painting in another description. Sometimes it gets very bugged out, and then the problem with XGen is that the undo is not very trustworthy. You can undo a few times, but sometimes like during the undo, it gets lost and then and loses connections and stuff. So it's a pain in the butt to recover after that, you know. So make sure that you every time you wanna, if you wanna tweak something, you have the edit button clicked. It's gonna turn red like that to tell you that's in edit mode, right? So that's basically like the structure for the each one of the descriptions, right? But look what's gonna happen now if I add a modifier. So if you click add modifier, you have a bunch of different things. You can add clump and collision, cut, displacement guide, linear wire, all this stuff. All of them gonna behave kind of the same. So if you add one of those modifiers, it's just gonna stack in here, and they respect the order. So for example, like if you have a noise on top of the sculpt, that means like you can keep sculpting stuff and the noise is gonna still work on there, right? But if you have the noise under the sculpt, basically like anything you do in the sculpt is gonna be countering whatever is in the noise. So if that makes sense, you know, it's like everything is stacked and respects like what's the underneath, you know, and you build on top of what's under. So you have to make sure that, you know, it's like if you're trying to do some sculpting, if the sculpt you wanna do is to, for example, like if you have a noise modifier, if you do sculpt on top, you can actually counter the noise and make everything straight again, right? But if the intention is not that, if the intention is just to use the sculpt layer to create like the major forms and add the noise on top of everything, then you have to make sure that the noise is at the very top layer, right? You do that by clicking and then basically like sliding with the middle mouse button, right? You can just slide and drop in some other area when you have multiple modifiers. The only one that's going to behave differently is the guide modifier. So the way it works is like this. I'm going to click the top layer, this one here, the top little node, add modifier, and I'm going to add a guide. When I do that, look what happened that's different from the other ones. You added the guide in here, right? It looks like a regular modifier, but as soon as I click guide and I scroll down right here and I click create, look what happened. Now I created all those little yellow guides in there, right? But it created its own description within the description. So if I expand guide, look at that. Now I have another, set of descriptions that's inside of it. So it's kind of like a subset of description in here. So basically the guide, you can also add like modifiers, right? So you can add like a noise modifier to the guides, not to the lashes themselves, right? So they're kind of independent, but this one actually influences everything that's below it, right? Again, the same deal. If we have like, if you did a lot of stuff with your guides, you modeled them, but you added a top layer that's like a noise, basically like the noise is going to take over and override whatever you have for the guides. But if you have the guides at the very top, they always going to drive everything that's underneath it, right? So now we have those little yellow lines. You can even turn off the main ones. So basically like the main hair by clicking the stop layer. And if you do that, you see the guides are still visible. You can do the opposite too. You can turn off the guides and just sculpt those guys, for example, right? So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to just click the guides, turn off this one. And now it's easy for us to see what's going on in there. The first thing I can tell is that they are a little short, right? So we're going to add some length and all this stuff. So remember what I said before, if I try to add length to the guides and I try to paint anything here, in fact, it's going to be affecting this layer here, which is not what we want, right? We want to affect the layer of the guide itself. So you see like the edit is red in here, but that is basically like it's this hair is here, the tiny ones, not the yellow ones, right? So if I try to modify anything, it's going to be sculpting the little hairs, not the yellow. So to modify the yellow ones, I have to click guide, go in here and see where they are, and then click edit. So now it's switched from that one to this one, right? And now if I try to sculpt, I'm going to sculpt just the yellow stuff. So let's look at the type of brushes in here. I normally don't use all of them, but almost all of them, but not all of them. So this one here, for example, is a place tool. And this one is for adding one by one. If I have guide selected and sculpt selected, I can add like tiny little guides individually just by clicking in any area, in any place inside of that area that was selected before. If I try to add a guide outside of that selected area, it's not going to work. It's kind of like because we started this whole thing with just those 2 rows of polygon selected. That means that we are constrained to this area for everything from this point on for this description here, right? So if you try to add anything here, it's not going to work. But if you click in any area within it, then you can add like little guides and stuff. And then we have these other ones, like we have the length one, which is the one we're going to be using now. So let's click on it, length. And then you see like by default, I'm working just one side, but you're going to have your tool settings in here. If you're not seeing that, you can always double click this one here, right? This little icon, and it should open for you in there. So now I have like the strength and I have the increment, are very low for me, but I don't have symmetry on. So I'm going to click like at the very end here, symmetry. And I'm going to turn it on to like world X. So now I have symmetry for both, right? So now you can see it there. So let's make this longer. And as I do that, if I have the other ones, the main hair in there is visible, you're going to see that they're going to grow, they're going to follow the guides, right? So the scale is going to be determined from the guides themselves. So for the length right here, the strength, I have 28. I can even add like smaller one because I want to do like in very small increments. And then the increment is very, very tiny. It's like 0.070, right? And one thing that you can do here, you can actually define the minimal length. So for example, I can make this like a top straightaway, like bigger. So for example, if I do this, let's see, let's make bigger. Let's do like 3 here. If I just touch them, you see already popped. I'm trying to undo here. It already popped like to a much longer hair. So if I have 4 for the minimal length, it's not gonna go shorter than this, right? So it's kind of like useful if you want to like make things even, right? Before you start doing anything else. So let's consider this one like maybe like 3.5 as being like the minimal I'm gonna use, even if I do some tweaks later. So it's just gonna do this, gonna grow them to 3.5 all the way across. Now I can actually just like unlock this one, just like go back to 0.5, and then I can just grow things here slowly because, like I said, I have increment very small. It's gonna grow this one's in the middle very slightly. And then with the control, you can actually make the opposite, right? Control reverses it. So I'm gonna shrink those ones in this area here. They're very tiny, especially like around there. They have to be very tiny, close to the carancula. And then grow those ones a little bit. Again, like this one's maybe, yeah, maybe a little shorter around here. Just a bit. And then a little bit longer right in the middle and even shorter around there. So the symmetry is working fairly okay. Let me just double check here. Control just to shrink them. You see like this area here is not being affected that much because we don't have guides in there. In this case here, it's good to add like a custom guide. So I'm gonna click this one here. I mentioned before the place tool. I don't need like symmetry in this case. I'm just gonna click within this area. It has to be in between those guys. Oh, sorry. I had the guide selected. Was the guide? Okay, let's see. Yeah, so now I have the little guide in there and then another one around here. Okay, so those two, and then maybe one here, just to make sure I can control the length of those guys, you know. And now I can switch back to my scale, the length one, and then make sure I have my guide selected in there. I'm just gonna shrink this one even further. Make sure they're tiny. Go very tiny actually. And then now let's just like hide the main eyelashes, have just the guides visible, and let's style them a little bit. So we did like 64 steps, so that means like we have plenty to work with. I actually can add a little bit more, another guide maybe around here. You see like it's pretty big gap in there. So I'm gonna just make sure I click this guy first and then add one in there. See if I have big gaps in here. Maybe one here. One there. We don't actually need all of those, you know, it's like you can get away with like much less than this, but that was generated automatically, so we're gonna run with it. And then I'm gonna click this one here, which is the comb brush, right? That's the one we're gonna use next. So the comb brush, I can go for like from below, and I have already symmetry turned on. If you don't, you can always go to the last option here and just turn it on. Can be based on the object or the world. I'm using world. And then from here, I'm just gonna go from the top and I'm gonna try to brush those guys towards me. And I try to keep like a, kind of like make an arch. So like, you know, more flared out around the, you know, the outer ones and then more straight in the middle. Okay. So from the side now, they look a little straight like that, right? So what you can do, you can actually go and click right in the middle and start lifting them very slightly. And then, you know, you see like the way I work with this brush here, you see the circle around it, the size of the brush. I try to just like kiss the very tips of them so I can actually create those curves more easily, you know. If you try to do it spot on, like with across the entire thing, sometimes you get some, you don't get a lot of control. So I'm just like kissing right here in the middle area first, and then I'm gonna go with the brush barely touching, you know, kind of like just like the edge of the brush, touching those guys to just like create this little nice curvature in there, just like a little kiss right at the edge or the tip. Up there. And it's good that if you can try to avoid to have them too wobbly like that. See, like it's a little wobbly in there. If you can make it a little bit more straight, it's better. And then keep the curvature obviously from the side. And then you're gonna have to look at your references obviously to see how much curvature you're gonna be adding. But something like this should be kind of okay as a starting point. Around there. And then let's take a look at the hair itself, how it looks like right now. So if I switch back to it, just make sure it's not too wobbly. These ones are kind of like, spread them out a little bit there. And these ones, they look good. Okay, so let's look at the curves themselves, the main ones. So now we have our hair in there. Since we have this selected, let's just increase a little bit of the thickness so you can see it better. Let's go to our width. I don't know exactly how much we're gonna go with, but yeah, something like that as a ballpark. Seems like it works. So we're gonna hide this one now, the guides themselves. So now we have just the hair in there. It's very even, right? It has some of the shape in there, but it's pretty even. So there are a couple of things we can do, like even if you get them like too high, for example, if they're too close to the eyeball and you want to bring them down slightly, there are a couple of things we can do, you know. But what I'm noticing here first is that it seems like they could be a little bit longer still. So let's just add some length. So let's get back to the guides. It's because I have like a very strong tapering in there, so they're kind of disappearing. So I'm actually going to increase a little bit of the length. So I'm going to go back to this guy here, length tool. And then I'm going to increase it around here. Mostly like in the middle section and a little bit towards the outer area as well. It looks a little bit better. So let's turn off the guiding here. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna start, instead of like using the guide to tweak stuff, we're gonna tweak in the sculpt itself, right? So if you're gonna do any sculpting, the guide's gonna be, you know, it's like on top, but the sculpt, I can actually add I can add a sculpt layer on top of the guide. So it actually overrides the guides. Let's do this later. First thing, let's click at the top node, that's the lower lashes, and then add a modifier, and we're gonna add a clump. So the parameters of the clump, they are here. So if you click the clump itself, you're gonna notice that, you know, it's like sometimes you're gonna get them in a good ballpark like that. You know, it's like they kind of like, they're clumping like in a certain interval in there. But if you wanna increase the number of clumps, you can actually go to the clump properties in here. And then where you see density, you can actually crank this. For example, if I do 5 here, see, now I got a little bit more clumps happening in there, right? Let's keep around, let's try like just 2. Right? So it's just like 2 in there. And then sometimes you get the nice result if you start reversing the clump effect. So for example, right now I have the clump at 1, right? If I start bringing this one back, look what happens. It starts like spreading out. So sometimes I use like a combination of like the clump going this way and another one set to actually spread things out. So if I use like -2, is going to be too strong now. It's too random, right? But you can find something kind of in between. So for example, like something around here. Actually, let's keep this first clump like going towards the middle like this one. And then let's add a second layer of clump. And this one we're gonna play with the scale. So let's do the scale here. The density is gonna be a little bit higher. So let's try this one at 4. Right, at 4. And then this one we can actually use to play the opposite effect. So let's do this way to add some randomness to it. So one is actually clumping inwards, the other one is clumping basically like outwards. So basically like adding more randomness to it. So yeah. So at this point here, I still can control all this stuff using my guides, right? Because right now, you see like both clumps are at the top of my guide in here. But if I go to guide and I decide to do some more sculpting here, it's still like the clump is gonna respect it. So if I click this one here and I pull some of this hair, it might be a little bit slow because the clump has to calculate. If that's the case, if you wanna go faster, you can just turn off. So click the clump, this little dot in there, right? And then now it's gonna be faster for you to sculpt. And actually bring this one towards here a little bit more. I'm gonna speed things up until I turn it on again. And then on top of this whole thing here, I mean, like this is just like a ballpark, right? We are doing a, creating like very fast some eyelashes in there. But then you can also add all kinds of variations in here. You can add like some, size variation, for example, by using some noise, like I said before, for the scale. It has to be at the top, right? So I can have to make sure you put it in the top of all this stuff. And then let's add more clumping here again. Turn off this guy. So that's basically what I have right now, right, for the eyelashes. It's good that they're not like in a perfect line. Like I said, some are a little bit higher, some are a little bit lower, right? Which is gonna happen with our eyelashes as well. And I would say like it has room to go more spread out than that. It's like, if you look close to your eyelashes, sometimes you get some of them pretty low. So a third row here would be worth it, I think, but it's okay for what it is right now. There is a trick here. You can actually move this stuff around, like the position of the edge itself, without moving the edge by tweaking it using a displacement node. And you do that by basically like click the lower eyelashes and then add modifier. And then I say displacement in here. So this displacement node, if I click on it, you see like there is a base in here, there's an offset. So if I click the base, I can actually, it's like move things around a little bit, and there's an offset in here as well. I believe you can go negative. So for example, like -1, yeah. So basically like you can bring it like from inside to outside. And there's a bump in here as well. This one actually doesn't do much. And there's a scale. So like all those things here, sometimes you can use to help you to keep like the hairs. For example, like if you went a little bit too high, you can bring them down a little bit by shrinking them and make them collide with the surface a little bit more. So it's an option, But I would say like if you want more precision, I would just like grab those edges with, something like you can try the mesh tools, the sculpting tools. You can just do like a grab tool, so I can keep everything constrained to the surface. And then you can just move stuff around, it's like use some relax as well, just to make sure that we spread them a little bit more. But yeah, a couple of options in there. So those are basically like some of the steps to create the eyelashes. But then obviously you can do a lot now in terms of customizing what you're gonna do, right? So for example, if I want to add some size variation, right? I can do this. I can click the top node, add a modifier, and I can just say like scale modifier, right? So the scale at the very top is driving everything underneath it, including the displacement. Actually, I'm not going to use displacement, I'm going to delete it. So click and delete. So the scale here now, you see like I'm going to be driving everything, right? With this node now. So what I'm going to do with the scale, I can add a noise modifier here. So I'm going to click this little checker. I'm going to go to my noise. So basically like 2D textures under Maya, the noise. See already something happening there, right? But it's kind of like funky. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch this to purling noise. And then I'm going to be playing with the amount of the frequency we have. So I'm going to be like, going to bring pretty high in here. So there's a lot of variation in size right now. We can actually make it a little bit more even. So I'm using a lot of noise in there just to add like, because they're kind of close together, to make sure that each one of those little dots in the noise is going to catch a different hair. So that's why I'm kind of increasing the frequency in there. And then there is a ratio in here you can play with, right? So I'm going to keep it kind of high for now. And then the threshold here is where you're going to start like leveling everything, right? This one combined with the amplitude as well. So you see like they're gonna start getting closer to the same size. So that's where you're gonna control the variation, right? So you can play with this one and then with this one here, and you can get like more or less variation for the length, right? So that's one way to do it. And then the other way is to actually customize things completely by sculpting things by hand, right? And the way to do this with XGen, this is gonna be across the board for all the hair, anything you're gonna do from now on. It's gonna be like this. You're gonna select the top node, and then if you have a sculpt node, you're gonna click on it. But the thing is, like, this sculpt node is underneath the guide, so probably gonna be overwritten. So at any time, you can just add like different sculpt layers on top of it. So if I want to sculpt something custom for the eyelashes, I would click this one here, add another sculpt modifier, right? And now I can actually expand it and then turn edit. So anything I do here now, it's going to be independent from everything else, and it's going to overwrite everything else that's underneath. So another very useful feature here in XGen is this guy here, which is the freeze tool. So the freeze tool works like this. If I paint something with the freeze tool, let's say like this, so that means like those are frozen based, like it's not going to be affected if I sculpt anything, right? It's going to affect the other ones other than what's frozen, unless you invert the effect. So if you go to your tool settings here, there is an option, for example, if I click to any of those guys here, if I click this comb brush, right? You see like there is a invert frozen effect. For most of those tools, you're gonna have this box in there you can use, right? So at this point here, if I try to brush stuff, right, bring it up, see like it's not affecting the blue area, it's affecting just the brown stuff, right? If I reverse it, like say like invert frozen effect, now just the blue one's gonna be affected and then those ones are not, right? So with that in mind, you can always like use a very tiny brush control. You can actually deselect, right? You just press in here to select, and then with control you deselect. But if you press B and drag with your left mouse button, you're gonna reduce the size of this little, the brush itself, right? So with that, like if you have a tiny one like this, you can like pinpoint the ones you wanna use. For example, if I wanna select this one, let's get this guy here. Local, global, let's see, it's too small maybe. Yeah, so I got that one. I can select like this guy, that guy, you know. You can pick like very custom ones to make sure like if you want to really go to town, like, you know, it's like styling everything. And then you can just go to your comb brush and you can say, use the invert frozen brush effect, right? So now with the bigger brush, I am sure that they're gonna only move those ones selected as blue, right? So you can actually style them, you know, it's like change the length. You can use the length brush as well, like the one we used before, right? Actually, this one I have to reverse the effect as well. So we're gonna click here, invert effect. And then I just like gonna grow just the blue ones, right? So there are all kinds of stuff you can do. You know, it's like you can really customize everything and make like a perfect mesh for whatever you have in your head. Now, we're gonna need to play with the thickness as well, right? The same way you did like the scale, you can actually add variations for the thickness. I'm not gonna do this right now, but I'm definitely gonna add some, reduce the thickness of those guys here at the very edge because they get super thin in there. So the thickness one is this one here, is the width tool. So it's this third one here. And then it's gonna work the same way. The strength, you're gonna put in there, the increment in here. So in this case, it's gonna go negative with the increment, unless you press control, that reverses it as well. And then there is a minimal length. I'm gonna put like really close to 0. And the maximum width, you can actually put something there. You know, it's like smaller. Let's see what happens if I just touch those. Yeah, I'm going like really removing the thickness in there, as you can tell. I'm making thinner. Those guys, I went too thin, so I'm gonna press control just to inflate them back a little bit. Let's see, around here, yeah, I have the symmetry on, so I already did for this side as well. Did a bit thinner. those guys. Maybe some of them a little bit thicker, a little bit thinner, just like pressing control and then without control, just like playing with it. So let's get those guys a little thinner as well. Right there. And yeah, I mean, like there is so much flexibility, you know, it's like with this whole thing. So let's do the peach fuzz next before you do the top eyelashes, because the top eyelash is going to be exactly the same process. So if you got this one, the only thing you have to do differently is that you have to add double the amount of eyelashes in there, right? And then obviously there are all kinds of nodes you can add. You know, it's like if you're not happy, you think they're too simple, you can always add like a noise, for example, like add a modifier at the top in here. Noise I use for most of everything. But in this case here, obviously, you're going to have to be very careful with it. Otherwise, it's going to get like weird, right? First thing I'm going to crank here is the preserve length to make sure that you're not growing too much. And then the frequency here, you see like you can get very scraggly, right? If you add too much of it. The magnitude as well is what breaks everything. But if you want to add a tiny little bit of noise, you can, you know. First, like you start with the big magnitude just to see how much you're going to bend them. Then if it's just a little bit like that, then you can bring the magnitude back and get this slight little, you know, variation in there. It's like noise is good for everything, you know, it's like to just introduce a little bit of variation. So that's a good one in there. And then now let's plug our mapping here. Remember, like we were talking about, you know, the influence for the peach fuzz, right? So let's add the peach fuzz first. And this is a little tricky because I know, like, if you search the internet, you're gonna find, for example, like number of hair follicles in the human hair, human head, right? And it's gonna give you like a ballpark in there. I don't remember, like if it's 100 to 150,000 hairs that we have in our heads, but there is no like. I mean, like I think there's a documented estimate of the amount of peach fuzz we have in around the entire body, which is like, I don't remember, like it's millions or billions, I don't know. But there is nothing that says like, okay, just the head and the neck, right? So we're gonna have to come with a kind of like a visual approximation here. So if I have around like let's say like 150,000 hairs at the head, I'm gonna probably like use maybe like 4 times that or even more for the peach fuzz. And the curious thing about the peach fuzz is that the function is to actually release heat, right? Like basically like the sweat is collected and goes to the surface, basically like to the tip of those little peach fuzz, and then evaporates, right? So it kind of collects and makes sure that you know, it's like you're always running cool, right? Like, so the peach fuzz helps with that. It has a thermal thing as well, right? It keeps like the temperature of the skin like controlled. And the thing that's interesting about it is that the network underneath the skin, if you have like a regular hair or beard or something like that, those roots, they go pretty deep and they all feed in the same network. So basically like, it's almost like they're, if you have like trees, right? And you have like a water source running underneath the skin. So they're gonna feed from the source in there, like the, you know, the little vessels and stuff. But the peach fuzz has a different, independent from that. It doesn't feed from the same stuff. It's kind of like it's a shallower network, and they are not connected to the density of the pores, for example. They're kind of like all over the place. So yeah, they are like shallower and thinner. So let's start by adding them here, like very quickly. So we're gonna just minimize, close my lower lashes here, so we're not confused about it. And then I'm gonna select the entire face. I'm gonna create interactive groom splines. And I'm gonna just name this one a peach fuzz. And then for the amount, you see, like if I have density at 4, that gives me around over 1 million of those guys. That's gonna be too much. Let's see, like at 2, that gives me about what I was expecting. You know, it's like I said, like maybe 4 times the number of hairs. Maybe a little higher than this would be good, actually. Maybe like 2.5. But there's always a way for us to like tweak it, right? So I'm gonna keep it around that. Actually, let's do it differently. Let's try to start like very low. maybe like even 0.5. And I can artificially increment this number later. And for the length, I'm going to keep it 0. Let's say 0.5 for now. And the CV count, because we have so many, you're going to be generating a ton of them. And we don't need to like crazy bends or anything. You can use maybe 8 in here, maybe even lower than that. So for the CV count, and I'm just going to apply here. And let's see what happens. So we got those guys now. Like, you know, it's like, it's not a lot because we use like a small amount, right? So it's like you can see the silhouette right there. And then, but it's applied everywhere. So like the lips have it as well. It's everywhere, right? I'm gonna just increment the scale here so you can see them, right? So they're kind of like everywhere. And that's, you know, is included this inside of the eyes and all this stuff, right? So if you go to the pitch fuzz, let's see, like I have the scaling here. I should have the density. I believe it's inside of the base. So density multiplier, right? So I have like 1. If I turn to 0 here, actually I'm gonna use the density mask. So if I put 0 in here, it completely disappears, right? If I put back 1, it shows up. So that means like I can plug those maps we exported from ZBrush. So let's click this little box. I'm gonna go to File, turn off my filter, turn off my auto-generate TX textures, and then I'm gonna click this name. And let's see where the maps are. Hair density, all right, so I got them in there. And I'm gonna turn on my Mari tiles. So I'm gonna go to Tile and Mari here, UDIM, right? So now let's see what happened with the lips. Still getting a little bit in the lips in here. It's probably because the map's not contrasted enough. So let's try to crank it a little bit. Let's switch to alpha's luminance first. And see what happens with the gain. Or maybe I'm gonna keep this one. I'm actually gonna tweak the exposure. Let's see what happens with exposure. It's not doing much. Interesting. I thought this one would work just fine. It's definitely affecting it because I see much less in there, but it's not like all the way. It's interesting. It's not affecting at all. Oh, now it's affecting. Okay. So I see them disappearing in there. So it's definitely affecting with the luminance. Okay. But seems like it needs more contrast. Can I go negative here? Yes, okay, let's try that. Let's go higher and higher. Okay, around here. Okay, again, I had to actually use some offset in there. Otherwise, yeah, I'm gonna have to play with this one. It's all a matter of like how you paint in the ZBrush. It was like full black, full whites and stuff. But this one here seems like it's working around this number. So I don't have anything in there. I don't have anything in the lids themselves underneath, and the lips are clean. So I'm gonna keep that number. It looks a little funky. Seems like this one's not gonna influence anything because we are using the alpha gain. Okay, so let's use this one. And now let's create like, one thing you can do, you can either paint everything manually, the direction, or you can create some guides as well. So let's go to my scale here first. I'm gonna add some variation as well. So you see like I can actually add some more length, right? And that same way, we're gonna be using a little noise here. So I'm gonna click the 2D textures, noise, and then I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna switch to Perlin noise, and then frequency, pretty high, 100. Remember, like in Maya, even if the slider go all the way to just like one number, like 100, you can always crank it like manually, like 400, whatever you need, you know. By the way, you have any questions, guys? I mean, like I'm just talking in here, just trying to get through this, but feel free to ask any questions, you know.
Yeah, I have a question, Chris.
Yeah.
So at this point, you should not modify anymore the geometry, because if you import a new geometry, would everything fucked up, I presume?
No, not at all. I mean, like, as long as you keep the same topology, right? I mean, like, if you have the same topology, you should be fine. From this point on, like, everything you're going to be doing, you're going to be iteration on top of this, and the hair should follow the structure of the face, even if you bring, like, as a blend shape. As long as when you bring the blend shape, you dial in all the way. I would say, like, to do that, turn off, basically, like, turn these little things off here so the hair is not visible. Otherwise, it's going to be very slow to do the blend shape. But once you have the blend shape in place, you can just delete the history just for the object, not for the entire scene. Because if you delete the history for the entire scene, it's going to wipe your XGen, you know. But if you delete just for the object, you should be fine. You should conform to whatever surface you bring, you know. You can really change everything if you want, and the hair is still going to follow it.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. I can do a demo for you, like, right after this, just to show you, like, how it works. But yeah, it's very simple.
Okay.
All right, so let's try this. So we got a little variation in there, but we still need some more length. So I just going to increase a little length in here, and then the amplitude. Yeah, so we got a little bit of you know, variation in the length in there, but not by much. I can really increase more if I want to. Let's try, yeah, maybe like a ratio. Let's try the color balancing here. Let's see if we can.
I got a question, Chris.
Yeah.
It's about HD Geo. And sorry if this is a stupid question, but if I bring in, like, I have my HD Geo mesh, let's say it has like 80 million polys. Can I import another mesh that's like 30 million and project those details?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. I mean, like, you can, but the thing is, like, you're gonna have like a limit of the amount of polygons you can see at a time, right? So, for example, if you have HD Geom and you're gonna be able to see maybe like 40 million polygons at a time, sometimes when you try to project like 40 million, ZBrush might crash, you know, in the process. So I would try to project like chunks of, I would say like 15 million at a time. And then that's more safe, you know, it's like a little safer to do. Yeah, but you can definitely do like HD to HD, HD to non-HD, vice versa. Anything works, you know, as long as you bring the model as a secondary subtool, you're fine.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So now I have all those guys in here, and obviously I can actually either create some guides to help me to you know, give direction to them, or I can go straight to them and just like use the comb brush and just comb them. But let's try to do with guides here and see how many we get, because I try to start with very low density, right? So let's try, if I click the peach fuzz itself, add modifier guide, and then click guide and scroll down and click create input guide, right? So it should create like a bunch in here. It might be dense actually, but at least it's a little layer that we can use for, oh man, that's gonna be dense. I can hear my gears spinning in there. Uh-oh. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a fairly dense. I hope I don't crash it. No, I don't think it's gonna crash. It's just like, it's probably gonna create a lot of guides in here. So maybe in this case here, I'd rather just like, you know, comb stuff manually. If like the amount of guides gonna be similar to the amount of, yeah, I see like there's a lot of guides in there. Yeah, let's use the guides. Let's see. So let's try that. Let's turn off the peach fuzz itself. And now visible is just the guides. And what I can do, I can just click this one here, the comb brush. And then I'm gonna try to turn off the symmetry actually, because you know, sometimes you get a lot of trouble if you're not doing that. So now you can just go and click the guide itself and turn on the edit for the guide, right? Now if I go here, let's see if we can actually move stuff around. I have the invert frozen effect on. You have to make sure you have it off, right? And then here, let's try, yeah, so around here, I'm gonna brush towards the outer area. And then there is always like a direction, you know, it's like you're gonna kind of like try to follow the direction of the cheek in here. And then around here as well. For the nose, I can actually bring them a little bit lower. There is one setting here you can try to use, which is this one, collide with meshes. It can be a little funky sometimes because it keeps the very base of the hair a little bit locked. But in theory, you're supposed to kind of like avoid intersecting with the geometry, you know. But sometimes you get some weird results with it. If you do, then I would say just you know, like just do it like manually. But you see, like the guides are actually all over the lips, right? Because I don't have a mask for the guides, but we have the mask for the rest of the actual hair, so we're not going to be worried about that. So I'm just going to be brushing this more towards outside, like that. And then same for this area. I'm going to go straight and then more towards outside, like that, kind of flaring out. Same around here. And then this is going to take you a little bit, you know, of time, because you're going to have to make sure that everything is pointing the correct directions. But then obviously those are tiny little hairs, and then it all depends on how far you want to push it. For example, like if you want to go later, you know, it's like in the ears, you definitely want to add them a little bit longer around the ears, right? But yeah, so I'm just using a little bit of the collide with meshes in there, and then just using a little direction here to bring them outwards around there. And then around here is going to be the same, kind of like brushing towards the outer part. And you see, like, it's still getting some intersection in there with the skin. So sometimes I rather not use the where is it? Am I using the correct one? No, this one. Collide with meshes. So you're just going to turn it off for now. And then this way I can actually just look at the, you know, depending on the angle I'm sculpting, at least I know what I'm doing. And it's not force some weird stuff to happen with the collide with surface that happens sometimes. So around the nose, I'm going to just bring them a little bit more, you know, towards the surface. And then around here, same, closer to the surface. Always using like the normal direction. So I kind of like I'm rotating the camera and helping using the rotation of the camera as a help. So I can see that, you know, where the intersections are happening and stuff like that. And again, like this is going to take you a while. I'm doing kind of fast in here, but you know, if you want to make sure that they are actually going the right directions and everything, that's going to take you a little bit. So now that we have something in place, you can use the guides themselves to actually add some more length to them, right? Remember this guy here, like the length tool? Let's use some of that for the guide itself. So make sure you have the top node selected, add its on. So I'm just going to introduce a little bit more length. Let's see, around here. Invert frozen off, just like adding some length to those little fuzzies around the ears. But at this point, like there's no like scale variation, right? Just really adding some more of that. Maybe underneath here, you can add a little bit more length. Each fuzz. When I sculpt the eyebrows, for example, I tend to actually make those guys a little longer around here because I use them to blend. So you can either create like a different definition just for the blending part, or you can really go to town with those and make them thicker, not thicker, but longer. And then you can use them and mix them with the eyebrows themselves. And you can create some interesting blends, you know, it's like you can make some very, very precise blending in there by doing that. So yeah, just around here, I'm gonna do the same kind of like, you're gonna start like from the middle section, you're gonna bring it down straight. And then here, you're gonna start bringing outwards. So you're gonna see that little effect in there. So I'm gonna go this way. And then obviously, like, you know, it always going to depend on like the amount of time you're going to spend doing that until you get something that looks really cool. So let's switch back here to our, let's turn off the guides, and I'm going to turn on my Peach Fuzz. So the Peach Fuzz now should follow all the new directions, right? The thing is, like, I have a ton of them. So in that case, I would like, maybe like tonight or maybe tomorrow, I'm gonna just like undo this, because I'm showing you guys how to do with the guides. But I think in this case here, I can actually have a faster response if I just like eliminate the guides altogether and just comb the hair itself, like, you know, by itself. So let's do this. It's thinking about it right now. It's just calculating, you know, it's like the interpolation between the guides that I just styled and all those little hairs. So it takes a little bit.
Chris, I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you gonna tackle the shader network for your room?
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. Yeah, that's another thing I have to do. Okay, so for the thickness of the hair, this one, like those little guys have to be like very, very tiny, right? Like very thin. So I have the scale here so you can see it at 0.95, but I would go, you know, higher with that. The scale itself as well, I think I'm gonna crank it a little bit more here. I think it looks a little bit, I don't know how interactive this is gonna be. Oh, actually the guides are, that's another thing, you know, it's like, you know what, I'm gonna remove the guide altogether. Like I said before, like it's gonna be easier for me to control stuff. Otherwise I'm gonna have to add like scale nodes on top and all this stuff. And like I said, it's gonna be the same speed to style the hair itself than styling the guides, because there are so many. So I'm gonna just delete these guides here, let's see. Okay, so like it's gonna be easier this way. And then if I need to style anything, I can just use the sculpt right here and then do exactly what I was doing before, right? Like just like brushing the hair itself, right? It's gonna be the same thing. But you know, I'm not gonna torture you guys doing the same process again, but that's basically what I'm gonna be doing. And then a couple of things here before you do the shader stuff. First, like the density of this, right? Like I have the density using a mask in there, but the density overall is very spread out. So what I can do with the Peach Fuzz, I can just use the density multiplier. Let's double this. Let's see how many I get here. A little bit more. Let's see, 3. 3, still not enough. Let's see if 6. That looks a little better, especially like from here, but I would go even further than that. I'm probably gonna have to find a happy number in there. But also, because the length is so little, I might actually have to increase the length, reduce the thickness of it, and then increase the density again. So let's try 10 here. Let's see how many I get. See if it's gonna take too long. Yeah, that's more like it, I think. Yeah, that looks a little bit more correct. So in this case here, I'm just gonna go back to my Peach Fuzz, and then we're gonna reduce the scale. And there's another thing, for example, like you see like those little lines, they are ending pretty abruptly, right? This is cool if you have like stubble, for example, so it ends like in a square because it's basically like shaved hair, right? But in this case here, we want to like make sure that they have a taper, because you know, they're growing and they're fully adult, right? Like those little hairs, it's just that they're very tiny. So they probably grew into a point. So I'm gonna just reduce the base and then the tip, make like very tiny, like that. And obviously, so they don't look like little spikes like this. You can always use a little noise modifier, right? So the noise is going to add a ton of stuff in here, because the first thing it does is actually cranks the you know, it's like it's trying to accommodate everything using the without preserving the length. So I'm going to just crank the preserved length just to force them to be in the same size. Maybe like I can even use that to my advantage and grow a little bit. So maybe at 70 there. But then the magnitude, I'm going to have to bring it back to something that's a little bit more natural. So a little bit of variation is good, but too much is not good. So let's see first, like if I crank all the way, the frequency here, maybe I don't need a frequency that's so high. Let's see. It's not even changing anything, so the frequency is not even changing. Yeah, something like that, the 0.090. So it adds a little bit of a curvature to each one of them, but without being too overwhelming. And then obviously, like the scale and all this stuff, I can actually play with this a little further and try to get, you know, some more like some larger ones, like longer ones, right? Still have to play with this, like it's all here in those parameters. Let's see. That's shrinking, that's growing here. That's the amplitude. Maybe the ratio. Yeah, I'm gonna have to play with this values to get something more interesting. But yeah, so that's like basically the pitch fuzz without doing the styling, right? I just like kind of like basically just add a little you know, noise in there just to help me out with the natural looking. But then the mask is definitely working. I just had to tweak the alpha in there, but it's definitely working, not affecting the lips at this point. So let's take a look at the shaders themselves. By default, Maya assigns those Maya shaders for everything, right? And they are not like the best. I rather use the you know, it's like the extra, not extra, but the Arnold stuff. So I'm just gonna click this one here, the little hyper shade, and then we're gonna start by creating. Let's just move around here. And if I look at what's assigned to it, so if you click lower lashes, if you click, keep going here all the way, you're gonna see there is like hair physical shader, right? That's basically what Maya assigned by default. But we need to assign like a Arnold hair shader to it. And sometimes when you try to assign it, Maya doesn't accept it. So if that happens, the best thing to do is to actually go here, click this hair physical shader, click select, and then press delete and just eliminate the shader altogether, right? But only if it doesn't work. So for now, I'm just gonna click the top node, like lower lashes right here. And let's click create a new shader. So under Arnold, if you expand shader, you're gonna see there is a standard hair, right? So if you click that one, standard hair. Now we're gonna assign it. So let's just name it first. We're gonna name it eyelashes. Oops, lashes. And like I said before, let's just assign it. So I'm gonna click this one, lower lashes. I'm gonna right click, assign material. And let's see if he accepted it. Yep, he accepted. So if I go all the way to the last one in here, you're gonna see eyelashes in there, right? So that's basically assigned to the hair itself. See, it got a little darker now. So a couple of things we have to talk about. Let's go back for a second here at the top node of the lashes, lower lashes, and I'm gonna go back here to the main node, which is, let's see, sculpt, noise, sculpt. Where is this one? Not actually this one. Let's see, where is the node that I need? Eyelashes, place, noise. Where did it go? It's supposed to be this one here. Yeah. So this one here, the first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna turn on the tube shade. So instead of like showing as strips, it's gonna try to show more like a little tube. You cannot see that much because they're black in here, but if I have them a little lighter, you can see like there's a little bit of shaded, mode. It looks a little, rounded. And then there's a couple of other things here. If you scroll down all the way here, you're gonna see there's an Arnold tab. And this one here by default, it creates ribbons when you renders. I normally switch this one to thick. So it renders as actually little tubes instead of like just a flat little guys. So it becomes like it has more volume that way. So those are the things that are gonna change. And then let's go back to the shader itself. So there are a couple of things here about the shader. For example, like there's the melanin. So the melanin means like if it's like all the way up, so that means like it's completely black, right? Black hair. All the way down is like white hair, like old man hair. In the middle, kind of like it goes like from blonde all the way to towards like a black, right? And then there's the redness in here as well. So the redness is going to, as the name says, you're going to get like more red hair or not, right? And then there's the melanin variation in here as well. So that one's gonna randomize. So you're gonna get like it's like some a little lighter, some a little bit darker. And then this one here is normally like I don't change it, but if you want to create some kind of artificial coloring of the hair, you can actually use that slide to actually do that. But if you want to keep like more like a natural coloring, then that's basically what you're going to be using for the most part. For the eyelashes, although they can go like completely black, for some reason I like the results better when they're not fully black, so you have a little bit less melanin. And for the redness, I try to keep it low as well. And I can add a little bit of this. All those parameters here, they accept ramps, for example. You can actually use ramps to create like like root to tip stuff, color variations. And then for the roughness and index of refraction, I'm gonna keep the same for now. But if I'm feeling that the result look a little bit like it could have more reflection, then I can actually crank those numbers a little bit, maybe like reduce the roughness, which I'm probably gonna be doing now. Let's see, let's do like 120 here. And then there is the diffuse one you can use to help to colorize the hair artificially as well. So if you plug like a so if it's like a hair that was actually using some kind of dyes or something, you can actually use that to add like artificial coloring to the hair. You can use that one, but I'm not going to be using the diffuse at all. I'm going to just keep it default. But just so you know, and obviously all those parameters here, they are in the manual, right? Like the online manual. If you look at Arnold 5 online manual, they have everything in there, like every single one of those parameters. So that's the best resource you can find. So I think like we are in a spot here, we can actually try to do a little render. Actually, let me add something to the peach fuzz as well. So the peach fuzz is still a little thick. So maybe I'm gonna reduce the width a little bit. Maybe like to 0.8, something like that. And they're a little long as well. So it's like it's very, very fuzzy right now. So I'd rather have this way and then like tweak down to like to have like a smaller, size than not be able to see at all. So let's keep it this way for now. And let's assign another shader. So we already have our eyelashes in there. I'm gonna just click this one, Control D to copy it. And I'm gonna just do like a peach fuzz. I can just name shader, otherwise Maya doesn't accept this shader. Okay, and then I'm gonna select the stop node again, click that one, and then I'm gonna go right click, assign. Let's see if it worked. No, it didn't work. You see, like, it gave me that error in there. So like I said before, if that happens, click the top node. You can actually go to the last one here, hair physicals, click it, select, and then press delete. That's gone. So now click the peach fuzz again, right click, assign. That should work. Yeah, so now they're all black now, right? So what we're gonna be doing now, we're gonna be shifting this color, right? Because right now it's completely black, but those guys are like almost like no melanin, right? It's kind of like, it's not like no melanin because that would be white, right? But they're like, they have a tiny little bit of a yellow. So like, a little suntan. So instead of like going full white, I'm gonna go maybe like 0.020 or something like that. Not sure. Maybe even lighter, yellower than that, but I'm not sure. 30. I'm gonna have to see in the renders actually. And then for the melanin randomize, I'm not gonna use almost anything. And not a lot of redness either. It's very little. So let's try like a quick render, which like I don't think my renders can be called quick at this point. They're kind of like taking a little bit. Let's just make sure I have only 6 for anti-alias here, so it goes a little faster. Oh, and also the size of the whole thing is a little, let's see. I have 1,000, so let's do maybe 900 just to save us a little bit of time. And let's see, this one, okay. Let's go to Arnold, open Arnold view, render view. And oh, and we're doing all this stuff without saving, man. Save scene as, finally. I have to remember that. Especially working with XGen, man. What I just did, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't spend like almost 2 hours without saving with XGen. I would say like do a few things, you know, it's like tweak color and stuff, save it. You know, it's like do a few more things like style things, save it. Because yeah, the thing that's is gonna be a little bit tricky from this point on as we start adding XGen is that any new layer of XGen, any new description increases the size of your file quite a bit. So up to this point, it was very fast to save the files. As you add more and more stuff, it's gonna get like slower and slower. Yeah, it's a lot of time to render. So let's try this. Let's see if we can render anything. And if we can see anything, right? Everything is so thin. How is it going so far? Like, it's easy to understand?
Hey, Chris.
Hey.
Yeah, it's pretty good explanation. I just have a couple of questions about XGen because I have some not so good experiences with it, but it's been in Maya 2016, so it didn't have interactive groom yet. But how stable is it for you, and is it possible to create any kind of backup? Because when I was trying it, I really couldn't figure out how it works, where it saves the files, and how to get back after it fucked up.
Oh, sure, yeah. So there's one thing you can do. I can show you right now. So if you want to make sure that you recover this thing here, right? Like, so for example, you have like my lower lashes here, and I want to make sure I create a backup. So what I'm going to do, I can go to descriptions. I have it selected, the top node, descriptions, and then preset, export. It's going to ask to save Maya again. So basically, like I can generate like another, you know, if a viewport snapshot here, I can actually create one just for this area here, for example. So it looks pretty in there. And then here, I'm just going to click this one, and I'm going to select the area where I'm going to save it. And I'm going to give a name here, for example, lower lashes 1, save. And then just going to click export. So we exported, right? So let's do something weird here. Let's just delete this one altogether. So I'm going to completely eliminate my lower lashes, okay? Delete it. So now I'm going to click the model itself, the entire model, and I'm going to click descriptions, preset, import. And I'm going to sample that one that I had before. I just saved, like lower lashes. And then there is position-based and UV-based. If you're changing your model constantly, right, you want to make sure that you have UV-based. Otherwise, like if a position changed, it's not going to find it, right? And instead of like using rotate to align with the new surface, I'm going to use the original orientations, the world space. So basically, like the default ones are going to switch both. And I'm going to just click import. So what's going to happen is going to create, again, the same structure, but the name is going to come a little bit funky, you know? It's going to rename the name, the name of the node is going to be different, but the structure should be completely preserved. So let's see if it works. If everything went fine, it should work. Reading, blah, blah, blah. So that way you can create like a backup for each one of those descriptions and have everything saved in there. And then if something goes wrong, you can at any time basically like recreate the whole structure, you know? I don't know if you can do all at the same time. I think you have to do one by one. Yeah, but that's a way to do it. So now you see like the eyelashes are back. And then, like I said, you see like there's he added the same name to the name of the node. So that's the only thing that's going to be different. Instead of like noise, now it's called lower lashes noise, you know. And then obviously you can actually select those and rename using. I think like there's a search and replace in there that he actually used to replace those guys. Let's see if it works with those ones. I don't think I tried before. Let's see if we go to edit. Is it edit? No, modify. So search and replace names. Let's see if that works. Lower lashes. Lower lashes 1 underscore 2 just underscore. Actually, do I have to have something? I don't know if it's going to accept without.
You can put space.
Can I put space?
Yes, and it will annul it anyway.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So that one worked, you know. But yeah, that's the only thing you're going to have to do. But in terms of what's working here, so the noise is working, the sculpt is there, the scale, the clump, everything is there. Another thing I forgot to mention as well is that everything has slides in here, right? So for example, if I have the sculpt brush in here, sorry, the sculpt modifier in here, you see like it's changing just a few of them that I tweaked by hand. If you expand, each one of them has a slider. So this one actually can blend things, which is really cool. So each one of those controls that have the slider, like the guides or sculpting here, you can actually tweak them. Oh, just click. Okay, good. So yeah, that's basically the way I do it. You know, it's like, so this is basically recovered from that one. I think the advantage of having recovered from the backup like this is that unlocks that area. For example, up to that point, I had this selection area I started from, and I could not add any more, you know, it's like hairs around that selection. You have to be always inside of that. And I think when you do this way, you bring everything and the selection is unlocked. So to try to see if that's true, you can do a quick test here. For example, like if I have my sculpt in here, let's turn off the noise. And with the sculpt on, let's turn this one on. And let's see if I can add any hair by hand in here. By doing that. And then under tool, I can just click interpolate. Let's see if it's working here. Yeah, it worked. So let's see if it works like even lower around here, for example. Yeah, so it works everywhere. So that's the thing, you know, it's like when you create something using a mask, like a selected faces, all the changes you're gonna do, you're gonna be locked into that mask. But now, since I brought like this backup by selecting the entire mesh instead of like just a mask, basically like he expands the mask to everything. So he actually unlocks that, you know. So that's a good way to unlock that. But yeah,
it's a pretty cool way if it's actually working now, because I remember trying everything possible and I couldn't figure it out.
Oh, in the past, like something was a little funky. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt, man, because it seems like
you mentioned you're having some crashes with XGen. Like, what is the thing they're still problematic? No, my question is, what is the thing that is still
the problematic? I would say, like, man, especially like the density brush, that one's like breaks all the time. This guy here, I avoid like the plague, man. I try to avoid that brush a lot. Because that's the theory is that you have like some density painted already, so you have all this peach fuzz and stuff. And interactively, you can just remove them on the fly, right? Just paint them out, and it worked, you know, for the a good part of the time when I was using like much simpler stuff, like very just a few of those descriptions. When the scene was very light, it was working fine. As soon as I started adding more and more descriptions, it got so buggy. And at some point corrupted like the main file, and then I had to redo a lot of stuff. Like it was a mess. So I tried to avoid that as the plague, you know. So instead of like using the density, I just like shrink. You know, it's like if we have like a full hair head of hair, and I basically like I need to remove some stuff from the forehead. Instead of like trying to use the density brush, in the past I would just like paint them to make them very tiny, basically like the hair very tiny in that area. And then very thin to look like peach fuzz, basically, and disguise them as peach fuzz. But now I use mostly like those masks from Maya, from ZBrush, and then bring to Maya and then use that to control that, you know. But yeah, dude, it can be very messy. I just had to run the updater here because it seems like the lights went funky. But I don't know, maybe like it's still funky. Maybe there's some lighting that I turned on by mistake. Let's see, did I turn something on? I turn on my noise. There's this over here. But yeah, so there's my area light in there. What did I turn on? Because it seems like it went so... Oh, you know what? That's not on. What's happening is this. Check this out. I did this and I didn't show you guys because I'm hiding secrets from you. So if I switch to another camera here, you see like I have my camera right there, right? See what's on the side of the camera? It's a flashlight. So basically like this is an area light that I just clicked and tweaked it to look like a circle, right? So instead of like a quad, I switched to disc, right? And I made a constraint. So basically like to create a constraint, just click the camera itself, click the light once it has the offset you want. And then you can just go to your rigging and you can say constraint parent, right? And then from that point on, anything that the camera does, the light's gonna do as well. It's very cool because I create this like flashlight effect that looks pretty cool, like especially with Stan Winston model. The only thing that's sucky here is that if I go too close to the face, that becomes a little bit too strong because I'm not controlling the strength of the light. So let's go back in here to this perspective here. And then if I have something that's close up like this, I'm probably gonna have to tweak this intensity to something much lower. Let's start with 100. There are ways you can actually connect things, right? And make sure that, you know, according to the certain distance, the intensity goes a little lower automatically, but I don't have that just here. Yeah, so I'm gonna keep around 50 here. So I can actually, it's not blown up. And let's get a little bit more closed up. All right. Around here. Gonna be slow to render, but I want to see just a little chunk. Let's go to the area light a little bit, 20 here. And let's try an area like this only. Obviously, my eyelids are not like fully sculpted or anything, so it's gonna look messy for sure. But let's see if the lid. Sorry?
I didn't understand completely why you were smoothing out the eyelids before in the start in the ZBrush.
Oh, ZBrush? It's just to create a nicer line. Because like if you saw my edges, they're kind of like some of the edges are going up in here too much, or actually they're going down in here. So I made sure that I create like an offset between that line that connects to the eyeball to this line here. So basically like it's more like a perfect arc, you know, because before it's kind of like it was kind of like going up and down a little bit. It wasn't very regular. So just make sure it has a nice, you know, curvature in there. That's all I did in ZBrush.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So you see they're still kind of like dark, right? They're too dark right now. And another thing that's happening is that I don't have a lot of the micro breakup, like the micro displacement happening here. And it's something that I might have to add a little bit more in this area by tweaking that bump height map, right? So, and the other thing is like they look like they could be a little bit thicker. So let's do a couple of tweaks in here. Let's try, go to the lower lashes, and then I'm gonna make it a little bit thicker. I don't know how much thicker though. Maybe a little bit more, like let's try 100. That. And then I'm gonna make the color, especially for like older people, I'm gonna bring the melanin down. Let's see if that helps. Let's see if I bring it down all the way. Let's see what. Yeah, that starts to get a little bit too brown. Around here. I don't even know if we're going to be able to see the peach fuzz because I have this flashlight from the front, but maybe I can turn it off just so you can see something. And maybe they are too thin as well, so that's another thing you're going to have to check out, because I definitely have them in that area. It's just not showing almost at all. It might be the, you know, the flashlight as well. It's kind of washing things out. Let's see in an area like the nose, for example. It has plenty of peach fuzz in there. Maybe from the side. Yeah, now there's a little glancing angle in there. You might, yeah, I'm gonna be able to see a little bit in there. Maybe right here. I think you're gonna need to go a little bit more yellow with them. They are very, very, oh, actually, they're not super thin. I thought they were thinner. Those are quite thick right here. Interesting, because some of them look very thin, but some of them look quite thick. I don't know if it's you know, it's sometimes it's the anti-alias. You know, if I crank it to 8 in there, they're probably gonna get much more refined. But I definitely need more of them. Seems like the density is very low, and they are going too white as well. So this is another thing I can do. Just like go back in here and tweak the melanin, add more melanin to it. Let's try with 100. And maybe just focus on this area right there. Yeah, basically like everything I said about you know, adding variations and stuff, you can use for basically everything. You know, it's like if you want something to look more natural, add some noise. You know, it's like for the length of stuff. You know, it's like add some noise for like the curvature of the fuzz. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with it. You know, it's like I just give you like the ballpark of, you know, it's like, okay, that's how you add all the stacks, but then now it's about your own art direction. You know, it's like, it's how you're gonna push this. And you know, like I said before, you can always isolate some of those peach fuzz like later on. For example, if you have like the ears, right, you can just like paint with a mask, like with the freeze brush, just like a few of them in the edge of the ears, and just grow just those ones. You know, it's like, so you can get like some of them kind of curving a little bit more. You can totally like customize the entire groom. You know, it's just really a matter of like how far you're gonna push it. But yeah, it's definitely working. It's just like it's not like in a good spot right now. It looks a little bit too white in there. Maybe I'm gonna add have to go a little bit thinner with them as well. Like they look a little bit thick, right? But it's you know, it's a matter of that thing that we always do, right? Like you add stuff, and then the next iteration is like, okay, what's missing? Oh, they're looking too long, so make it a little shorter. Oh, needs more variation. Adds more variation. Needs more curvature. You know, it's just a matter of like each pass now is just like refining things. But as a ballpark, it's at least it's there and it's working. You know, it's just a matter of like really refining it. It's still very white. I can definitely make them more yellow than this. And they're super long as well. Like peach fuzz can be like very small. Although I was looking like I was looking at some references in here, and then you guys remember Selma Blair, right? Like from Hellboy. She actually has cancer now, man. It's like so sad. And she posted a picture of her face with the peach fuzz, and the peach fuzz is freaking long, man. It got like really long. I think it's from the treatment, maybe like a chemotherapy or something. And it's interesting because you can see them. Let me try to bring this one up. So basically, like, this is her face now. Look at the fuzz, man. It's like super long. It's cool that you can see like a little bit of the density of it, you know, it's like how many you get. But it's also deceiving because they're so long, you know, it's like you get very, very fuzzy right now. Yeah, quite sad. I hope she gets out of this, man, because it's a brutal illness, you know. There's another one I saw that was kind of like a front view. Same with her. Oh, this one. Check this thing out. That's her now. Very interesting, huh? Because I mean, like, she probably has a ton of them in here as well, but because like you don't have like a glancing angle, like or a silhouette view, you don't see them in here. They kind of like mix with the color of the skin, right? Because they have this yellow tone to it. So it's like, you know, very hard to see in here, but they're in the silhouettes, definitely there, like a lot of them. So yeah, it's a matter of like finding this sweet spot between like the color and in the thickness of, obviously the length as well, right? But let's save this one, store, and do another tweak here.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Do the shaders for the hair usually have any translucency in them?
I think like in the past I had with translucency, but then I ended up like just using the melanin. But you know, it's like you can try with that. I mean, like where was that? There's a spot where I remember. I think it's in the top of the shader. Let's see. If you go to the very top, peach fuzz shape. Oh, this one I have to use the tube shape as well. And I forgot to change this, so let's try that. Ribbon and then thick. So let's see, primer visibility. Yeah, right now it's opaque. I mean, like that means it's gonna create like opaque shaders, but doesn't matter because they're so tiny. But in terms of translucency, I'm not sure if this shader has it. In the past, I basically like I cheated. I used like a standard surface for Arnold, and then I had basically like all the options we have for the skin. So you can actually create something that's kind of like, you can add like translucency, all kinds of stuff. But I don't think this one has a ton of control. Let's see, direct extra samples, matte opacity. Yeah, I don't think you have a ton of control for translucency. Yeah, doesn't seem
I
like.
guess what I also meant, like, would it need it? Is it maybe already implemented with the melanin, or is that just color?
Yeah, I think like if you have enough, like if the thickness is right and the melanin is it's in the right spot, I think he kind of like, it looks pretty good, you know. I think I don't think you need the translucency. And anything with translucency is going to increase a lot of the render times as well. So I would rather not have it. But yeah, let's see, scale. Did I add a scale node somewhere? No, this one here, right? Seems like the scale went too far and I need to bring them down a little bit. Yeah, let's bring it down a little bit. And let's try that again with a little bit more yellow melanin. And my crappy stubble in there doesn't look very good in there in that render. So I'm gonna have to actually remove some of that from the skin. See, like, it looks a little crappy. I think once you have the stubble itself in there in place, it's gonna help like to mix with this stuff. But for now, I think they're too much. So I'm gonna be eliminating some of that. Let's see how it turns out now. It's gonna be shorter, more yellow, but still the density, I think we could have more in general, as long as they're shorter. Let's see how this turns out. Then yeah, like for adding stuff for like nose hair, it's gonna be basically the same approach. Just gonna select those faces inside of the nostril, and then I'm gonna grow the hair to be quite long until it breaks the silhouette, like breaks the from outside of the hole in here. And then I'm gonna add some noise as well to kind of like add some curvature to them and get a little bit more scraggly in there. And then I think that's gonna help. And the density is always like a mystery, right? Like I was looking at my wife's nose hair, and they're super thin, and the density is quite a lot. There's a lot of them. But then I was looking at mine. I mean, like they are a little bit thicker and a little bit less density. So I guess it's gonna vary a lot in there. But for this guy here, for example, I would keep a little thicker and maybe not so dense, but dense enough to actually cover that little hole in there with hair. And the way that I normally assign is like I keep them away from this bordering here. I assign just in the internal area of the nose, the nostril, but I cover the entire thing. So all the way, like the entire pocket is covered with hair. And then because of the direction of the normals, they tend to actually go and meet in the middle, which is kind of like what happens with our nose. You know, it's like they kind of start from the sides and then they meet kind of in the middle, kind of like point towards the middle. But as long as you have some noise in there just to add some curvature, I think it should look okay, you know. But in terms of the color now, I think I have a little bit of a variation, and it's adding some like dark ones. Look at that. Some of them are getting very dark and some are getting very shiny. The yellow ones look better. The length looks better, but now I got like lots of dark ones in there. It might be like the melanin variation that I'm using. It might be adding a lot. Even here, you know, it's like those are all like dark hairs. Look at that. Should be getting a lot of hair, dark ones like that. So yeah, I'm gonna be playing with it and trying to get to the happy medium in there. And obviously, it's like sometimes you get some dark ones. Like my kid, man, like he's 9 years old, and he has black hair like this in his nose since he was like 6 months old. He has those weird hairs, man. They're pretty dark right in his nose. So yeah, it can happen for sure. But this one's look a little bit too much. But
maybe the whiteness comes from the spec because you have really strong light next to the camera.
Definitely, it's definitely catching up from the how you call it, the flashlight, right? So yeah, a way to try to fight that is to actually maybe like add a little bit more roughness to it and reduce a little bit of the spec, and then let the color itself play the whole thing. I think you're right. I think it's mostly the reflection that's happening right now, especially from here. It's definitely catching a lot. But yeah, man, I think that's it for today. But so next week is going to be basically the last week, right? And that's going to be mostly like focus on XGen. So you're going to be trying to find the best way to do the braids. And then in the meantime, I mean, like in terms of techniques and stuff for the skin and then for the hair, like how to put this XGen together, it's all out there. I mean, like it's just you guys taking, you know, like further and further steps, but basically like the basis is in there. And then I'm gonna let you guys work on the skin variations specifically, right? Make sure that you don't have everything so even. I did lots of passes like to, you know, I show you guys like there's a like elastic brush with the drag rectangle just to increase the depth of certain pores, so you can pick one by one and do that. I showed yesterday like elastic brush with the spray that you can actually add like bumps and noises and you know, it's like kind of like acne marks and stuff like that without destroying the pores themselves. So there's lots of little things I put out there like for variation of the skin. So make sure that it doesn't look too plain. I was like across the board. Otherwise it looks very much like silicone. And obviously there is always like your carve brush that you can do by hand, right? You can just like pick some of those lines and then like carve, for example, around here the nose, right? See, it's very plain right now, but I have plenty of room to actually carve and connect some of those dots and introduce some micro wrinkles forming around this area here of the nose. Same for the nasolabial, right? So I can actually get this area here to look much more interesting if I start carving some of those in there. I can add like some color to those blackheads, right? Right now they're just little bubbles in there. I can keep some of them a little bit more albino like that, but some of them I can actually pick and paint some color. So like there's always a ton of things you can do, you know. It's all a matter of like how much time you're gonna put into it, and then go to town with it, you know. But in terms of content, there's a lot out there for you guys to deal for this weekend if you want to push it. I definitely need to push my model much further than it is right now, and by that I mean like I'm not going to be introducing anything I didn't talk about, but it's definitely like adding more wrinkles and more detail and stuff. You know, tweaking my my color, my albedo, right, from the day that we painted to yesterday. The difference is that I added more dark tones, but basically like using the same technique, like, you know, it's like spray, spray, spray. And right now it looks like this. Let's see. So it looks pretty dark, right? If I go back here and then turn on the flat color. So that's basically what I did. And this is not even HD, right? But I definitely added a lot of darker tones in this area. And the nose, some redness as well, right? But it's definitely a much darker tone for the skin. And the ears are basically like no texture whatsoever. So if you look at the model I posted on my Instagram, it totally shows. The ears are completely plain, and the face has a ton of detail in there. So yeah, guys, try your best to do some work this weekend, because I mean, like next week is the last one, and by the end of next week we're gonna have the final reviews. And yeah, and I hope you guys can catch up a little bit through this weekend, and I'm gonna do the same because I'm definitely falling behind. So, all right, guys, as usual, always a pleasure, and I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I hope you know, find some time to do some work, because, you know, that's the only way you get stuff done. It's just like sitting your butt and do some work. Right, guys, have a fun one, and I see you soon, and in the group as well. Keep posting in there.
Bye, Chris.
Bye.
Bye. Alrighty.